Hey, Nikki Brown here. No matter where you are and what part of the world you're in, I hope that you're having a good day. So, I came on here to talk about dating. Dating is going out to get to know someone, to see whether or not you like that person likes you, if you're compatible, if you have a connection, if you have chemistry, if you have good communication, good conversation, and all of those things. Dating is not sex, but you can choose to have sex with someone that you're going out on a date with if you want to. Dating isn't that easy nowadays because a lot of people's morals and values are very different. I think especially for my generation, and I'm 47. Um, those of us who were raised with more traditional morals and values, and those could be religious morals and values or just certain sensibilities that maybe more modern people do not follow. Um, Back in the day, we would meet one another, talk on the phone for long periods of time, and then, hang out and then, maybe become intimate with someone. Or even those who were raised to be more marriage minded, they would get married. But even if you didn't get married, you may have still been marriage minded. And I think that's one of the reasons why women will have children by multiple men, because they're hoping that it will work out and they're hoping that it will turn into something more than just how it started. Um, I was definitely raised more marriage minded, and in certain families, it's frowned upon for you not to get married, especially if you have a child. And I did have my child at 18. Thought that, my son's father would marry me, but, he still wanted to have fun. And so I pretty much backed away so that he can have his fun. Um, and in hindsight, I'm actually glad that we did not get married because I didn't have to go through getting a divorce, or stay stuck in an unhappy situation. Because, um, if someone again wants to be free and do whatever they want to do, sometimes you have to love that person enough to allow them. And um, before I got pregnant, I asked him if this is something that you think that you can handle, and he said yes, and he wanted to continue to be in a relationship, but he wasn't being honest. And that's the thing about men, especially nowadays. A lot of men aren't honest. They're not honest about what they're thinking. They're not honest about what they're feeling. And yes, I know that women can be dishonest as well, but I date men, so I'm talking about men, okay? Um, you'll have that guy who's 5'4" and he says he's 5'10", right? Especially nowadays that we're meeting people on social media. You'll have the guy who will lie about his income or his education or whether or not he's been incarcerated, um, or what he was incarcerated for. Um, some may even lie about their children. Um, Now, again, that's an integrity issue. And if you still decide to deal with someone who would be dishonest about something like that, that's totally, a person's choice. Lying about height, that's something that people consider a little white lie, but I always tend to question what else is this person lying about. Because really, why lie about that? Like, eventually the person's going to find out that, you're not that tall. As you as tall as you said you were. Um And dating is especially challenging or not as easy in Atlanta, right? I'm sure we've heard this before. There are a lot of guys who are on the down low. Uh, there are a lot of guys, and this could happen any and everywhere, of course, but a lot of guys who are married, a lot who don't want to commit. And it seems like, though, the married ones or the ones in relationships or the ones living with somebody, they go the hardest, right? They do the most to prove and to win this woman over because they want her to deal with their situation. Um, but you do have that small percentage of good guys, right? Who was raised with similar morals, values, sensibilities, whatever you choose to call them, because some people aren't religious. So morals is more related to religion. Values and sensibilities is more related to maybe someone who's more conscious or even just not religious. Not necessarily, but potentially. And what I realize is that a lot of men can be intimidated. Again, this is not something that men would openly admit. But in a age of social media, a guy will go on your social media page and he'll see a woman with makeup and hair, whether it's a wig, weave, or her real hair, and they think, oh, she's too high maintenance, or I could never win her over, or I could never be with her. When really that's all she wants and that's all she's looking for is someone who was raised to be honest, someone who can be loyal and faithful and it be okay. And also, even if he's not business minded or an entrepreneur, someone who's open, right? Who's ambitious or at least willing to be more ambitious and, willing to work with her. So she could be a successful entrepreneur and he could be, a janitor, you know, at a college, let's just say, right? But she comes in and, maybe for the most part, he just has his work clothes on. He goes, hangs out with his buddies, drink a beer, go home, put the uniform back on the next day. She may encourage him, let's go shopping. I was talking to one of my coworkers about this earlier. You know, make sure you look um a certain way, or you carry yourself a certain way when you're out in public. Or, you're good at this. Don't you think it would be a good idea to start a business? So someone who's supportive and encouraging, because women can motivate men and be supportive and encouraging to a man to a point where even if he never considered being an entrepreneur before, he all of a sudden has this six figure business. And so when we're looking for someone, what Kevin Samuels called a high value man, or just automatically looking for and thinking that we're just going to find this man who already is established or makes six figures, may not be realistic. But someone who has good morals, values, and sensibilities and is willing to work with you and not be intimidated by you, and who's not jealous or envious or thinks that you're out of their league, I, which I really don't understand how we as human beings think that someone is better than us or above us, or that they would not be interested in us because of a status. And I know that it exists, but people who again were raised to be more marriage minded, or who had relatives that were more marriage minded and marriage focused, even if they ended up in divorce, those those core values are still instilled from birth to, say, 6 years old or even 12 years old. So fundamentally, even if this person decided to have fun over the years, fundamentally, they still have those core values. Even if the person may be divorced once or twice. Like a lot of people tend to criticize Steve Harvey because he's on his third marriage. But to me, that says he learned from those other marriages. And he's obviously, from what I can see, is now doing it better. And he chose better this time, right? And he chose someone who pretty much upgraded him and made him become accountable and responsible as a man. She wouldn't tolerate some of the things that other women allowed him to get away with. And that's what most men need, even if they don't want to admit that. They need a woman who's going to be supportive and encouraging and push them to do something outside of the box and not just stay safe. You know, who will, say, oh, you're a handsome guy and there's nothing wrong with you wearing a uniform, but let's, maybe get you some shoes and some slacks, or, a good looking pair of jeans and some sneakers, whatever you like to see your man in. And, you know, give him a sense of pride. Because there are those, blue collar men who, didn't maybe grow up in the city. Maybe they grew up in the country. Maybe they grew up in the suburbs. And they may be more of the nerdy type. And again, they have, you know, maybe a religious upbringing. And you don't necessarily have to date someone who's religious, but even if that person is religious, but they're open-minded and willing to hear what you have to share or what you have to offer, this is still considered a good man, right? Not, not the one who's going to be controlling and who's trying to be possessive. Although I do know that men like to be possessive because they don't want anyone else to get your attention once they start to like you. But I'm talking about the overly possessive ones, who really it's borderline controlling. Um, but again, you have those who do have good morals and values. They're a small percentage of the population, though. You you may want this, but you don't really want this if you really want a good man to settle down and be married to. But that shouldn't really be the focus. Again, dating is getting to know people, right? But if you want that pretty boy type, he's attracting a lot of women. And he's probably potentially pursuing some of those women, right? Not to say that the man that you meet can't be handsome, but again, he may be that blue collar worker who wears a uniform to work, and when he gets off work, he looks dusty. There are some women that are checking for him, but most women aren't checking for him, right? Especially if he's driving a pickup truck or he isn't driving a certain kind of car and this, that, and the other. Like earlier today, and this was a handsome guy. And, he spoke to me and then he turned around and looked, and then we saw each other at the register, and he said, I'm not following you. And I was thinking in my mind, you can follow me if you want. But your fine self. But I didn't go there, right? I could have. That's what I thought about, but I didn't go there, right? But it seems I meet a lot of men at the grocery store, like after work, because, again, these are the blue collar men who probably get up at 6 o'clock in the morning and they're off work by 2 or 3, and so when they get off work, they're at the grocery store, um, getting something for themselves to eat. So, you know, these are the types of men that you may be interested in. And again, I could have, flirted a little harder. We could have exchanged numbers. um, and see where it went. If anything, I could have went out on a date to see whether or not, there was a mutual interest, attraction. But I didn't. And, but he initially showed the attraction. He may have thought that I wasn't interested, but at this point, I'm just focused on making my money, right? So I'm not really thinking, and I have gone out on dates, and of course, I can date. Um, but I'm not really thinking about that right now. And usually when you're not thinking about that, that's when you meet somebody who's probably good for you. But again, I didn't push the envelope. I just laughed when he said what he said, and I continued to scan my groceries, and then I left, right? And I'm of the thought process that if it's really meant for you to meet someone or be with someone, you'll run into them again. Does that always happen? No. And it could be somebody that may have been good for you, but or good for me. But again, I didn't push the envelope. Um, but it's fun, to have men that are attracted to you and to flirt. Um, and again, there's nothing wrong with exchanging numbers with someone and potentially going out. But again, he may not drive, the kind of car that you see the hip hop stars or the actors and actresses driving. He may be in a uniform, a dusty uniform with driving a pickup truck. And there's nothing wrong with that. He could be a mechanic. Um, Again, he could be a janitor. Any of those things, but if he really likes you, a lot of men who really like the woman, they are open to her suggestions. If you make a suggestion to a guy and he's not supportive or encouraging, or he doesn't even consider it, he's probably not the right guy for you. Because I feel as if once two people get together, they should be building something together and not just staying in safe jobs or having safe role, unless that's what the both people want. But if she's the type of woman, and I'm specifically referring to seeing a woman on the internet and being intimidated by her status, by her looks, by her work ethic, by her business, or something similar to that, right? So instead of being intimidated by her, him being open to allowing her to upgrade him. Not that he's doing bad, not that it's not about that. But again, these in my mind, relationships are about building and being better and having more so that you can leave something for your children. It's not just about go to work, go out to eat, go to the movies, buy liquor and whatever else and do it all over again. To me, that's not the type of building I would like to do with someone, right? And certain men have a tendency to stay safe unless they have a supportive and encouraging woman who will help push them a little bit, to get them to go in a different direction. And there's nothing wrong with if you'd like to stay safe, but there's also nothing wrong with having a supportive and encouraging partner who will push you to do more and be better, to, to be your best version. Is it easy? No. And again, a lot of men are out here lying about what they think and what they feel. So, to a certain extent, this woman may have to kind of play the counselor role and help him heal some of his past relationships and connections. Because most men don't heal. They just push it down and bury it and pretend it didn't happen. They don't want to talk about it. And then you have some women who are communicators and they want to talk about it. Or then you have those men who want to avoid it altogether and they just want to watch, reruns of Different Strokes or, you know, a comedy special and pretend that everything in life is okay when it's really not, when they're really an emotional wreck on the inside. And then when they get into this relationship with this good, nurturing, caring, supportive, encouraging woman, there's a tendency to think that maybe she's naive or gullible, and she's not. And she has, a lot of strength. And she's not going to just tolerate some of the things that maybe, again, were tolerated in the past. And she is going to be supportive and encouraging and push him to do things. And not, this is not in a forceful way. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying in a very loving and encouraging way. She's going to encourage him to do better and be better, be his best version. Um, but that's like finding a needle in a haystack, right? That's maybe like, you know, 1% of men, whereas you have that 99% that are, your pretty boys who think they look better than you. They got to stay fly. They've been a mirror longer than you. They want, they always need validation because they're not healed and they have a lot of trauma. Um, and they go through women because that's part of how they feel validated, because society says that's what you're supposed to do. Um, but look for that needle. Um, and there's that old saying that you have to mold him. You kind of do, though. This is not being his mom or telling him what to do, but this is just being coming from such a loving place that he, doesn't mind being upgraded or changed. And again, not that you're trying to change him. You're just bringing out the best in him, right? So that's what I wanted to say. I hope that was helpful. And as always, I love y'all. Later. Mwah.